Hello and welcome to the Civils Times. Today we'll discuss the editorials of 7th February 2019. These are the articles we are covering today. Now today there have been no major articles in the Indian Express. From the Hindu, now this is your editorial and op-ed page. These two articles, tough talking as well as Trump and his generals discuss about the ongoing Taliban reconciliation process, which is basically chalking out the future course of action that shall be adopted in Afghanistan post the US withdrawal. Now, this issue has been discussed by us in the previous video lectures, and therefore we should not be discussing these issues in these editorials in today's video lecture. We shall take them up again after they have reached a finality. Ayodhya and the challenge to equality. Ayodhya issue is not important from the UPSC perspective. At the cost of equality, this deals with some journalism award. Again, not important. We shall be dealing with the remaining highlighted articles, which you can see on your screen. Now, this first article from the Hindu is "We need a leap in healthcare spending." Now, the author is basically pointing out that India's public spending, public per capita spending on health is probably the lowest in the world. You can read this here. The per capita budget expenditure on health in India is probably among the lowest in the world. And he says that the government's goal has been to increase public health spending to 2.5% of the GDP. However, it continues to remain around 1.15 to only 1.5% of the GDP. Moreover, to reach its target, the government should be increasing the funding for health by 20 to 25% every year for the next few years. Now, the author is lamenting that the interim budget has taken care of the farmers as well as the middle class. However, it has not adequately been responsive to the health sector. The total allocation, despite having seen an increase of 7,000 crores, yet there has been no net increase, since the total amount is still 2.2% of the budget. Further, he compares the public spending on health in India versus the USA. Now, he says, the public, first of all, in the national perspective, the National Health Profile of 2018 has said that there has been an increase in public per capita expenditure on health from 621 rupees in 2009-10 to rupees 1,112 in 2015-16. Now, despite the fact that this is doubled, public per capita expenditure on health has doubled in these 6 years, however, this figure continues to stay abysmal. Abysmal meaning very minuscule and small. Now, for the analysis of this, the author provides a comparison with US. You can study the data yourself. You'll come directly to the conclusion. The federal budget spending per capita on health in the United States is around $3,150, which is about 100 times of that in India, which comes out after adjusting for purchasing power parity to $30. Therefore, if you compare, in US, it is basically $3,150, whereas in India, after adjusting with purchasing power parity, it comes down to merely $30, which is not even 1/100th of that spent in USA. From this, you can basically realize these low public per capita spending on health. Now, this is what is being pointed out by the author. The 6,400 crore allocation to the Ayushman Bharat PMJY in the interim budget will help reduce the out-of-pocket expenditure, which is a massive 67%. However, despite this, the per capita budget expenditure on health in India continues to be the lowest in the world. Further, he points out that 1.5 lakh health and wellness centers should have been mandated to be set up under Ayushman Bharat, which was announced last year. The mandate of these health and wealth centers is preventive health, screening, community health. But other than this, the author says it should also include health education, holistic wellness, integrating modern medicine with traditional Indian medicine. Further, it should take care of both communicable as well as non-communicable disease programs. The non-communicable diseases programs of this paragraph talks about the low funding that has been given to the allied sectors in health itself. The non-communicable disease program has been allocated nearly 175 crores, which has been reduced from the earlier 275. The National Tobacco Control Program and the Drug De-Addiction Program has been given only 65 crores, again, which has seen a decrease of 2 crores. The allocation for each of the wellness centers is less than 1 lakh per year. And this is a meager amount. Now, history has shown that where there is a long-term commitment and resource allocation, rich in return on investment is possible. For instance, the AIIMS New Delhi is the premier health institute in India with a brand value because of resource allocation over decades. AIIMS Delhi alone has been allocated nearly 3,600 crores in the interim budget, which is a 20% increase from last year. Now, translating the same thing for the other domains in the health sector, author says that similar allocation over the long term is needed in the other priority areas. Further, the author is saying, now he has provided lots of factual data here. You can make a note of this, which shall be very important from the perspective of mains. We'll straight away jump to the conclusion. Increase of GDP alone does not guarantee health, since there is no direct correlation between GDP and the health outcomes. However, improvement in health does relate positively to GDP, since a healthy workforce will contribute productivity. Further, the health sector must be made a priority area like the defense, which is seen around 10.6% of the GDP allocation, whereas for the health sector, it is only nearly 2.2% of the GDP. Since a major innovation in universal healthcare is being rolled out, it must be matched with a quantum leap in funding. Further, only if we invest more for the long-term health of the nation, there shall be a similar rise in GDP. Moving on, checks and balances. Now, in this article or editorial, the author talks about the recent demand of the opposition parties to increase the counting from the current pattern to a count of 50% of the VVPAT slips. Now, we'll discuss this issue along with the article. There has been a significant and welcome change from the earlier demand for return to paper ballots. Representatives of a large section of the mainstream opposition parties met the Election Commission to demand changes to the VVPAT counting process during the general elections. Returning to paper ballots would have been regressive. How? Now, paper ballots, this demand had been there by the opposition parties in lieu of the EVM tampering controversy which had been raised themselves. However, the ECI had time and again proven that the EVMs are standalone devices and therefore these cannot be hacked. And no evidences have been provided that these can be hacked. Yet, the opposition parties had raised the issue of the EVM controversy and they had demanded that there should be a return to paper ballots. However, this demand was ludicrous because the paper ballots were not only time-consuming and expensive, expensive because of the security that had to be provided plus the infrastructure which is required. Further, these were also liable or susceptible to booth capturing or invalid votes, etc. Therefore, return to paper ballots would have been a regressive step, which the author has also mentioned. The EVM process, despite the plethora of grievances about its functioning from the opposition, is a major improvement over the paper-based ballot voting. Further, there has been no evidence of EVM tampering, and administrative and technical safeguards instituted by the ECI and the EVM manufacturers have held steady since the introduction of the EVM. Despite this, due to the demand of the opposition parties, the ECI had fast-tracked the implementation of VVPAT, which is an adjunct to the EVM. Now here, the author gives a brief definition of VVPAT. What is a VVPAT? It allows for a paper trail for voting and later verification of the electronically registered mandate in the ballot unit of the EVM. The VVPATs are now deployed in all the assembly and parliamentary elections, along with your EVMs. Now, what is the opposition's current demand? The opposition currently has demanded for a count of 50% of the VVPAT slips, as opposed to the current system of counting VVPAT slips in one randomly selected booth of each constituency. Now, this demand has been raised by the opposition so as to ensure transparency and eliminate any doubt about possible insider fraud by the errant officials or manufacturers. Now, while this demand to count half of all the slips is an overreaction, a scientifically and randomly chosen sample of both is reasonable enough verification for the process. However, there yet remains a question whether counting one booth per constituency is statistically significant sample to rule out any errors. The ECI is waiting for a response from the Indian Statistical Institute to come out with a conclusion for this demand. The other issue with the weave part is more significant, which is the machine glitches. Now, in the recent bipolar elections which had been carried out, the machine replacement rates for the weave pads were up to 20 to 4%. Now, certain hardware-related changes were introduced which had led to improvement in functioning, and the machine replacement rates had come down to around 1.89% in Chhattisgarh election. Deployment of improved machines should help curb the glitches in the Lok Sabha elections. Moving further, a worrying approach. Now, this article talks about how Ayushman Bharat, the insurance scheme which had been announced last year in the last year budget for providing a coverage of rupees 5 lakh a year, has been rejected by certain state governments, West Bengal, Telangana, Delhi, and Odisha, over certain issues with the central government. Now, West Bengal, Telangana, Delhi, and Odisha have not joined the Ayushman Bharat. The question arises whether the scheme is hurting the idea of cooperative federalism. Now, the 7th schedule of the Indian Constitution has made the state governments responsible for the hospital services. Moreover, the states have their own schemes to provide financial risk protection to those seeking medical relief. Based on the ongoing centrally sponsored scheme, the Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, the central government has launched an improved version, which is the National Health Protection Scheme (NHPS) for a sum assured of rupees 5 lakh per family per year. Now, why this tussle has arisen between the centre and the state? The centre has insisted to prefix the Ayushman Bharat to existing state scheme names. Further, there shall be a dispatch of a personalized letter to 7 crore families with only the Prime Minister's photograph. Now, this has been seen by the states as an attempt to attribute the entire credit to the current administration, central administration, despite the fact that state governments are almost equal partners in this scheme in the implementation. They shall be funding 40%. They shall be bearing the entire responsibility for the implementation. Further, they shall be covering double the number of beneficiaries. Now, the NHA's approach has not NHA is a national health agency. Its approach has not seemed to be built on consensus. Its model consists of outsourcing the vital functions of pricing services, pre-authorizations, scrutiny of bills, grievance redressal, etc. to private companies and third-party administrators. Now, this would increase the administrative costs from current 6% to 30%, as seen in the Medicare scheme of the US. Now, besides the policy of providing fiscal incentives to private sector to establish hospitals in deficit areas without insulating the government-owned facilities, or the small and marginal hospitals that together provide 95% of hospital care, this will tighten the grip of corporates in secondary and healthcare tertiary markets. This will result in cost escalation, more so because of the rapid consolidation and aggregation of tertiary hospitals by foreign financial conglomerates, private equity funding agencies, impacting prices, access to tertiary care, and the very sustainability of the National Health Pension Scheme. Now, this article is very important from the perspective of GS2, center-state relations. So, all this shall be all for today. Sorry, there's another article, pension for the informal sector workers. Now, this is your scheme, Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi Mandan, which is a pension scheme for the informal workers, which was announced in the interim budget recently. Under the schemes, the subscriber shall get an assured monthly pension of rupees 3,000 from the age of 60. They shall be contributing 55 rupees if they join at the age of 18 and 100 a month if they join at the age of 29. Further, the government will match these contributions. Whom does it include? It should include basically all the informal sector workers in India whose income are capped or lower than rupees 15,000 per month. Now, what has been the government allocation, the budget allocation for the scheme? The current interim budget has allocated nearly 500 crores for the scheme. However, this is likely to increase in the full budget, which shall be announced in July. Further, the budget documents show that the allocation for Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi Mandhan could possibly come at the expense of an existing pension scheme, the National Social Assistance Program, which is providing benefit to around 3 crore poor senior citizens, disabled, and the widows. The NSAP's allocation has come down from 9,975 crore to 9,200 crores, which is a drop of 775 crore. Now, this shall be used to fund the Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi Mandhan. Now, there are certain issues which have been pointed out by the social sector workers. They're saying that creating a voluntary pension scheme for the informal sectors is not likely to work as the salaries are pretty low. And the argument is that they already pay large amounts as indirect taxes. Further, for a salaried worker, the pension contribution will be directly deducted at the time he is getting his salary. Whereas the informal sector workers, such as a daily wage earner or migrant laborer, will, however, have to regularly deposit his or her income each month, which is an uncertain proposition. Now, what lies ahead? The government is silent on what happens to the scheme if an informal sector worker misses a contribution. Further, what will happen to a worker who is transitioning from the informal sector to the formal workforce? These certain questions which have been posed by the critics of the scheme. From the Indian Express, there were no good articles today from the perspective of UPSC. That shall all be for today, and thank you and have a good day.